Shahar Azani, sitting in for Rabbi Mark Golub, who is recuperating at home from an illness. Mark is doing well, and I know you all join me in wishing him a speedy and complete recovery, refuah shlema, and that he'll be with us back soon in the very near future. And in the news, yesterday, a terrible day on Capitol Hill, when angry supporters of President Trump stormed the US Capitol, forcing elected officials to be rushed from the building. To discuss this very important and most timely issue, we have the pleasure of speaking today with Dr. Eric Mandel. Dr. Mandel, who beyond being a good friend, is the founder and director of MEPIN, Middle East Political and Information Network, as well as a senior editor for security at the Jerusalem Report. Dr. Mandel has regularly met with and briefed elected officials on Capitol Hill for many years, working on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans alike. All that in order to educate members and their legislative aides about the American national security interests and the volatile situation in the Middle East. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric.
Pleasure, Shahar, always.
So as somebody who is a frequent visitor on Capitol Hill, please share with us, how did you feel watching those images flowing out the way they did yesterday?
So I was literally being interviewed on a foreign network, Iraqi television, and they were showing live images as I was being interviewed of the mob coming into the Capitol, guns being drawn, protests. I heard shots in the background, literally as I'm doing the interview. And I was shook. Though I saw places that I go frequently, that are places that are sacrosanct, that are places that are the temple of American secular democracy. And being a proud American, to see them being blemished by incitement from a sitting American president, and the whole scene really jarred me terribly. And I have not lost my hope for America. I believe this is a setback, but it was truly something that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime.
What kind of responses did you get from your interviewers outside of the US? Because for many of our viewers today, we are used to watching such images outside of the United States in various other countries, as I'm sure you as a security analyst for major media outlets have seen. How was it to wear the shoe on the other foot?
It was almost exactly 10 years ago. I was in Israel watching what was going on in Egypt at the beginning of the Arab winter as it was beginning. And I never possibly thought that this could be something that could happen in the United States of America. So the fact that it did happen, and I have to say that people have warned that this was possible based upon the rhetoric, the inflammatory rhetoric that's been out there, but I still thought it was almost incomprehensible. And my job is to think in security of all possibilities. And I knew something like this could happen, but once it did happen, it really makes you first feel proud of what we had, and how do we get that back? And when I say proud, because I believe our republic, we as being Americans, being an American exceptionalist, believing that this is a special country here, that we will get back to what we are. But we have some really hard work to do. And I believe the good people of this country will come together. And I believe that this is, to my mind, even though they're the loudest voices, this is still a fringe and a minority voice.
It was just announced that Facebook and Instagram have banned President Trump indefinitely from their platforms. What are your thoughts about that move?
So I think it's appropriate for right now, I believe for the next, it was 13 or 14 days that he is a president, because it's through social media that he did incite, in my opinion, these riots. However, I have to be honest that I wrote a piece about a month or so ago that said that we must be very careful, because I'm a big believer in freedom of speech, obviously no speech that can incite violence. But I don't like the idea of corporate America having censorship. I think we should always lean to more freedom of speech. I mean, we think about it in the Jewish world, the cancel culture of limiting speech. We have actually people who say that I am suppressing your right to speak is my speech. This is how people scream down Ambassador Michael Oren, Bassam Eid at the University of Chicago. So this is a careful balance. But at this point of time, I think that was the appropriate decision because we're in a very volatile period in American history.
Well, there are those who claim that what we've seen yesterday and in the last couple of days before, but especially yesterday with the riots on Capitol Hill and the way the media covered those riots, how do you view this in comparison to the riots we've seen all across the US a few months ago with the Black Lives Matter across US cities? There are those who claim that the media is being hypocritical, that the riots on Capitol Hill are being denounced naturally, as they should be. But when the riots came out in the mid-2020s, and you've had situations where businesses were looted and people, were injured as a result, and you've seen some elements in the media encouraging and other people who actually justified it. So how do you feel? Is this comparison even justified?
So first of all, I vociferously protested and spoke out against those riots when people inexcusably excused them. So let's be clear, they were wrong then. This is wrong now. The stakes here are higher than they were for those riots in some ways. But yes, there was definitely a hypocrisy that defended what I thought was indefensible. But when property is attacked, when people are attacked, and people justify it, rationalize it, it is wrong. And that is not, we are about rule of law, and we will have it ruled in our favor sometimes by the courts. In this particular case about the dubious charges of an invalid election, there were conservative justices who were appointed by President Trump who did not give any credence to any of that. We follow the rule of law, and the peaceful transition of power that George Washington started is the foundation of this country. And the fact that that was challenged here goes to the fundamentals of our democracy.
Yes, I couldn't agree more about the foundation of democracy in this regard, and shining city on a hill that is an example for the entire world. And I think that's part of the amazing moment of seeing the smoke billowing off of the Capitol building in the United States of America, with works of art being looted from the building, and questions of security, not only politics, come to mind because the scenarios are unimaginable. But I want to take you up on that point that we just discussed, the BLM riots and the some attitudes in the hypocritical elements in the media and beyond the justified. We're talking a lot about the claims that the president had made and his supporters, but at the same time, there has been, in the course of the last 4 years, continuing efforts to delegitimize President Trump, to attack him in the Russia probe, to mock him and his supporters. Do you think that, or the way some of them viewed as being hushed in the elections or procedures, do you think there is any weight to, could we have done it otherwise, not only on the Trump side, but also on the other side? Should the behavior had been different? And had it been different, would we have seen different outcomes?
So first, I'll say a pox upon all sides here. There's lots of problems here. There's no excuse for what has happened. Let's just be very clear about that. But we go back to 2016. I have to be honest, President Trump was my 17th most favored candidate of 16 Republicans running in the primaries. But once he was elected, there was a plan to delegitimize his election, and people, the media. And by the way, I wrote a piece actually for the Jerusalem Report. I believe it's out this month, specifically about the editorialization of news, advocacy journalism in the name of real reporting. And that has really gone on. I think that's really the issue here, is that the media give their opinion and sell it as real news. It's really entertainment. And this is in all media, from the right to the left. It's very hard to find truly objective, where people work really to see facts in context. There were many things that are hypocritical that have gone on both ways in what's gone on during the Trump presidency. But the Trump presidency, he did himself no favors. As my friend Gil Troy, the historian, said, he was the first president who was only the president, at least, and made it clear that he was only the president of the people who voted for him. Now, granted, every president follows their agenda, but he truly was hyper partisan, and he did himself no favors because his attachment to the truth was tenuous, being generous many times. And true leadership, even if you agreed with his policies, and many policies that he had regarding Israel, I supported, but he, in my opinion, demeaned the presidency. And that is not what we're about. I want leadership. I want moral leaders. And I have to say, when we see what has happened at this point of time, this should be a harbinger, a warning for Israel, which is going through its fourth election in less than 2 years, that there is no president, no matter how good or bad they are, that is more important than the people and the democracy they represent. And the Jewish democracy in Israel, whether they choose Benjamin Netanyahu again or not, is more important than any individual. Same thing here. Trump is, no matter what you believe, is not more important. Joe Biden is not more important. They are placeholders, incredibly privileged people to do the people's business. And they should truly try to be ethical. The media, Democrats and Republicans, all have to step up here and stop attacking one another with ad hominem attacks and get back to respectful dialogue. Disagree on policies, but don't attack people, and don't say that if you don't agree with what I say, you are evil.
So I couldn't agree with you more. I think that at the end of the day, the fact that if we are, it's very easy to point a finger and say, those supporters, Trump supporters are horrible. They are. And what they did is inexcusable. And to see a parliament building being breached is a shocking sight for anybody who believes in democracy. But at the same time, just like you say, Eric, it's important to take a look at the root causes of this and address them as well, even though that might not be as easy as other issues, whether it's what you mentioned about the cable news maximizing their audiences by these, adopting political stances, or the role of social media in this regard. I think this is super important, and thank you for highlighting those issues and also drawing a line to Israel, because it's not about the people, it's about the democracy and the structure that sustains us. So I do hope that this will take a significant part in the work of the next administration, and also in Israel and across the world, in protecting the foundations of our democracy on both countries. But as a Jew, and as an Israeli, and as somebody who knows Israel like you, Dr. Mandel, like you mentioned, you've been in Israel when Tahrir Square in Egypt riots took place in the Arab winter. There was a picture circulating on social media showing the flag of Israel. And there were those images of Nazi supporters, the Auschwitz camp t-shirt. That was a truly horrible sight. Did you notice those images? What do you think?
Okay. First of all, I'm an American citizen, so you said.
No, I'm an Israeli.
I didn't see the images. Having said that, sometimes an image can be taken out of context of what it is, because a person brings a Jewish symbol. It is something that is not representative of the Jewish people and should not be attached. American Jews for many years have always said, when there is, for example, a financial irregularity and somebody has stolen money at Wall Street, and we all say to ourselves, oh gosh, I hope it's not a Jew, because it reflects poorly on us, whether we are Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal. Whenever we see a Jewish symbol used in an inappropriate way, and I'm a big believer in separation of church and state in America. Israel's a different world. It's a Jewish democracy, a different kind of world. But I don't like, just like I don't like politics from the Bima, I don't like, Jewish symbols being used to advance a political purpose, even though Jewish ethics are so important.
But what do you think about the juxtaposition? Pictures coming out of the same rally yesterday that show the flag of Israel, and then the Auschwitz camp on the other with the neo-Nazi supporters. I mean, that was an untenable image to watch.
It's terrible. And again, shouldn't the media, in their censorship, where they very often censor points of view, they should realize that that is not a fair representation. But again, it goes back to what you just said. It's about entertainment, sensationalism, putting it out there to either advance their opinion or to increase ratings does a disservice to the public. So it's bad for America, it's bad for Jewish people, and it is not facts and context.
You know, this it's important, like you say, not to take the easy route. I want to pick your brain a little bit about the politics of the matter, because amidst all of the noise and the horrible news and the images that came out of storming the Capitol, it's important to remember that the Georgia elections took place and the 2 Senate seats were won by Democrats, who now control the House, the Senate, and the White House. What does that mean? And do you think the reason they lost was because of President Trump's allegations about the elections, or was that supposed to happen in any case?
I believe the election in a right-leaning state like Georgia, despite the fact that Biden had won it just a couple of months ago, is directly attributable to President Trump. President Trump saying that the election was illegitimate, I believe, suppressed the vote. We talk about voter suppression, that's usually the words of the left. I believe that President Trump created voter suppression of Republicans. And this was a reaction to President Trump, and it should fall totally at his feet. What it means, well, we are a divided country. You have to remember, even in the election where Biden won, the Republicans increased or narrowed the lead of Democrats in the House. We're almost 50, we're 50-50 in the Senate. We're 50-50 almost in the House. President Biden did not have an overwhelming victory. This is a divided, polarized country. And what we need to pray is that President Biden and his administration don't look at this as a chance that they have an overwhelming mandate to change the country or change American foreign policy, but that they need to lead with humility and for unity. This will be a test of U.S.-Israel relations to a certain extent, because there has been an ascendancy within the leading Democratic Party that looks upon Israel in as harsh critics. I'm not just talking about the squad. The president himself, who's considered a center-left centrist, is somebody who has promised to rejoin the Iran deal. That's something I've written about for many years. I was in the Senate working with the chairman of the office of the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, talking about it being a very bad deal. And it is coming.
But Eric, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to say that I think that this important analysis vis-a-vis the future of this administration and Israel-U.S. relations post-Trump, I think it's a topic that I'd love to discuss with you.
I'll come back for that.
Separate show, but I think it really deserves a show on its own, and we'll definitely do it. But I just want to bring back the focus to this for a minute, because the head is still spinning from yesterday, and mentions of the 25th Amendment come to the front discussion, and there are those who claim that the president must be removed from office. What are your thoughts about this 13 days before the ending of his term?
Well, it is certainly possible that this president could do damage to the country or in foreign affairs. I believe that there's actually already a Republican who has brought up articles of impeachment at the House and from the House of Representatives. I can only speak personally here. And I do not think he will be impeached, because I think there's not enough time, and I think it will be in a divisive world, it won't happen. But do I think what occurred yesterday rose to the level of an impeachable offense? I believe the answer is yes. I actually believe that the Ukraine affair rose to the level of an impeachable offense. I do not believe the Russian part did. I believe there were many false allegations there, even though there were associates that might have been implicated, was something to delegitimize a president, which was not right back in 2016. But at this point of time here, I'd like the president not to be on social media. And it is something where I know cabinet officials, I can tell you, have already discussed, President Trump's cabinet officials, whether they should ask Vice President Pence to consider the 25th Amendment of going on at this point. The fact that we're having this discussion is earth-shattering. But I am concerned about the next 13 days. And I wish I could snap my finger and actually make January 20th, January 7th, and we moved on. I don't see anything positive happening in the next 13 days.
Do you not see a chance that the president will understand the negative implications of what happened yesterday, that words actually have impact, direct, real life impact, physical impact, and might use his immense power with his millions of supporters to calm things down? Don't you feel that potentially banishing him from office at this point would also mean having a significant fissure with so many of his supporters?
He's had 4 years really to bring us together and has chosen to be incendiary all during those years. I don't expect to change. Even his comments yesterday when he asked for those people to withdraw were with many mixed messages that were there. I don't believe he's going to take advantage of this opportunity to be a conciliator, which is what he should be and should have been doing and should have done. I was not somebody who was out there saying this as one of those anti-Trumpers, as my friend Brett Stevens was from the very beginning, or George Will. I was more than happy to give the president the benefit of the doubt. If I didn't like the person, I was able to maybe look past to policies. But I think it has crossed a line in the sand with what happened yesterday.
So just because I can't help myself and because of who you are, I just have to squeeze in this question that's really, really troubling. How do you settle a contradiction between a president who behaves the way this president does internally and somebody who's led such successful endeavors in the Middle East, bringing about unprecedented normalization and peace on the other hand? How does that work?
You know, I'll tell you something, I really give credit here, and I know people don't like to give credit, to Jared Kushner. What Jared Kushner has done, and he's done the hard work for the normalizations, and with the 4 countries and with Saudi Arabia, and now with between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I believe it's been some of the people that he has made some good decisions, and even though he's been terribly disparaged that he was somebody who couldn't get things done, Jared Kushner did some pretty impressive things. And I think we as a pro-Israel Jewish community of the right and left should thank him for those things that he has done. The president did things, I have to say, regarding Israel that I believe increased American national security interests, where other presidents just didn't have the courage to do them. But that doesn't excuse what has happened today. So yeah, there's a contradiction here, Shahar, between some policies that I liked. The country was doing before the pandemic, this country was doing amazingly well economically, but that's not enough. I want a president to be presidential, and that I respect who the president is, even if it's somebody I disagree with their policies. And if I agree with their policies, but I can't respect the person, that's a problem.
You know what? I'll take your ending as a perfect ending for a small discussion today, in saying thank you to Jared Kushner and his hard work for making a real difference for millions of people in the Middle East, and in the hope that this trend will continue beyond the Trump administration and into the Biden administration. Eric, I'd like to thank you wholeheartedly for joining us today on JBS and for your important message and words of wisdom.
Okay, let us all come together as a country. And I really believe, I'm an optimist, that we have better days ahead, as Ronald Reagan would say, that we can become that beacon on a hill again for democracy in the world.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Eric Mandel with an important message for all of us on always conducting a respectful dialogue, on keeping open minds to do the people's business, and what a privilege it is to be and represent the American people, and to maintain democracy, not the people, but the system, in all of our hearts. I'd like to thank all of you for watching, and to all we say, stay safe, stay healthy. I'd like to thank our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director, Dara Golub, our technical manager, Michael Paley, transmission manager, John McDevitt, and to our wonderful producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal, and again, wishing refuah shlema to Mark Golub. For JBS, I'm Shahar Azani. Until next time, see you soon and lehitrao.